So now it's my great pleasure to invite my very dear friend, Marianne Williamson. We've done things in the past, we've done things together, and you know who she is. Marianne, please join me.
In the Course in Miracles, it says that an idea grows stronger when it is shared. And I think we're all just amazed by the opportunity that technology is giving us today to expand symphonically and synergistically a conversation about changing the world. That's what we want now. We want a world that is what it could be. Every time you see a little baby who is so beautiful and gleeful and that marvelous potential that you see in a small child, two things come up, which is number one, this is what it could be for every baby. This is what life could be. And then, of course, number two, how tragically not that the world is in so many cases. 17,000 children on the planet, in fact, who die of hunger every day. But we also know that we can't change the world without changing ourselves. Going back to what Debbie was saying when she heard Deepak talk about the macrocosm and the microcosm, that space itself is part of the illusion. There really is nothing outside. Outside and inside are part of the illusions. Gandhi said we must be the change that we want to see happen in the world, because unless we change, the world won't change. All that the world is, of course, is a projection of our thoughts. So we come to understand the very intimate interface between global transformation and personal transformation. It's not either or, it's both and, because ultimately everything we do is imbued with the consciousness with which we do it. So an angry generation cannot bring peace to the world. A generation of us who are still stuck in our own fears cannot bring the world to the loving place that we wish to see and to bequeath to our children. A shadow is simply a place where the light is blocked. And in the Course in Miracles it says that light is to darkness what love is to fear. Darkness is not an entity, it's an absence of something else. And fear is not an entity, it's the absence of something else. If you don't like the darkness, you don't hit it with a baseball bat. If you don't like the darkness, you turn on the light. Now, the light of our true being is who we are. There are many names for this. Christ is a name for it. The Buddha mind is a name for it. Immaculate concept, the illumined self, the Shekinah. There are many, both religious and non-religious ways of referring to the notion of an illumined zone within us, which is the truth of who we are. Now, we're born in that place. All you have to do is see a little baby. We are born in that place. And then, from very shortly, right after birth, we begin to be vulnerable to the woundings of this world. And so, in various ways, we become wounded, and something happens. And in that moment, regardless of what the experience was in childhood, with parents, with school, with just the culture, something in us becomes blocked. And there becomes a place in us where we don't know how to extend our love and get our needs met. You know, I have an experience, I think it's an actual birth memory. And I think it's true. I'm prone to think it's true because I see the light that they actually have in operating rooms. And I feel I have this memory of being born and just having this extraordinary love to give to the world. And this was in the early 50s, and they still thought that you needed to slap a baby to help the baby learn to breathe. And so my memory is that as soon as I was born, carrying this extraordinary love, this man slapped me. And I remember being completely traumatized by, like, why would he do that? Right? And then I have the memory after that experience. And I think that is, you know, Jack Kerouac, when he was asked about On the Road, is it true? He said it's true even if it didn't happen. So I think that's also true about that birth memory. It's true even if it didn't happen. That something happens that puts us into trauma. Everybody's trauma is different, but what results from that is a wounding. Now, Freud defined neurosis as separation from self. In that moment, we were knocked out of the center. We were knocked out of the love. We were knocked out of the Christ zone, the Buddha zone, the illumined zone. We were knocked out of our love that's right in our heart. It's like somebody kicked us right there. And in that moment, we separated from self. We lost what in AA called conscious contact with the divine. Now, this is not a place where we're bad. It's a place where we are wounded. But you know, if a little child comes up to a parent and says, I have a cut on my hand. You say, come here, you have a boo-boo, let me kiss it. If it's an external wound, everybody knows the most natural response to it is, here, let me help you. Let me give you medicine. Let me give you love. But if it's an internal wound, it doesn't show up as a wound except to a very initiated, enlightened person. To the normal person, your internal wound doesn't show up as a wound. It shows up as a character defect. They don't look at you and go, let me help you. They look at you and go, you controlling, bitchy, mean, needy, whatever you are. And so, in time, we come to understand that as adults, it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to transform that place within us. Because until we do, that character defect, which, as I said, came from our wound, will cause all kinds of havoc, both within us and without. It ruins our relationships. It makes us say things and do things that sabotage our own good. And, you know, the only thing more desperate than, oh God, I blew it, is, oh God, I blew it again. I did it again. This thing has become entrenched in me. And that really is the work, to me, of the transformation of the shadow. If you don't know what your shadows are, I always say your best friends could probably tell you. And I think for most of us, you know, I started lecturing in the early 80s. This is not the 80s. The era of data collection is over. We've all read the same books now. We've all listened to the same tapes. At this point, if you don't know what your issues are, I don't even think you could honestly say that you don't. You know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the issue is to realize that of yourself you can't stop. And I don't think it's just drugs or alcohol. Sometimes it's, I can't stop turning into a needy, jealous person when I'm with a lover. And I'm ruining my marriage or I'm ruining my love affair. I can't stop going into dependency when I'm with a certain kind of person. I can't stop getting controlling when I'm afraid that things won't go my way. I know that I shouldn't be that way. I figured it out. I've been in therapy. I'm whatever. But at this point, I know it's become like an entrenched behavioral pattern. It's a mental habit pattern I go into that somewhere, in some way, some wires got crossed, and on a level deeper than my rational mind can mend, I don't know how to stand in a certain kind of situation, be my loving, serene, most beautiful self, and get my needs met. And in that moment, I go into whatever word we use, and the word tonight is shadow. Now, it's very interesting because in all the great religious and spiritual systems, there's a way out of this. And the way always has to do with some form of what Debbie went through when she found herself on her hands and knees and she said, please help me.